Good morning. So by now, I'm sure you guys have heard the recording of Tom Cruise snapping on some cast members. I'm not going to reiterate what he said, but in essence, he said, if I see you do it again, you're fired, and if you don't do it, you're fired. And evidently, people were standing too close to each other at like a giant TV screen or something. And he was like, people are depending on us. Every night he's on the phone with movie studios and stuff. They're making their business off of us. Um, People are losing everything. Let's talk about it. Sometimes I think the left spends too much time on optics. Um, and this is an example of that. I think the left, like, we want to believe that people will just do what's right. Like in a in a in a in a reasonable society, when the head of the CDC is saying something, we would listen, right? In in a reasonable society, you wouldn't have a president downplaying the wearing of masks during a worldwide pandemic. In a reasonable society, you wouldn't have this whole moral imperative to not wear masks because wearing a mask makes you a feminine, a emasculation of the male. You wouldn't have that in a reasonable. We don't live in a reasonable society. America is not a reasonable society by any means. I'm gonna say it again. America is not a reasonable society by any means. In fact, in many ways, America has become more like a third world country every day. Every day, a little bit more. You can see it all around you. Tom Cruise, that's a person that knows his value. That's a person that knows where he stands and he knows his value. You know, he's not going to. I mean, it's some of it is it's money and business, which I'm not a party to either one of those things. But some of it is also just frustration that we're 9 months into the pandemic and you have people that still don't take basic precautions. That's frustrating. And the fact that he's got this thing going where because some jackass not wearing a mask could shut the whole thing down, that's got to be 10 times as frustrating as I am sometimes, as I feel sometimes. It's not just about them, because I guess we all thought that in a major emergency, whether it be an asteroid or a pandemic or whatever, we just thought the issue would be about, okay, how do we get out of the situation? How do we, nobody ever thinks about what a long-term, what I call long emergency looks like. Emergency that goes on for a year or more. No one ever thought about this. No one ever sat down and was like, let me see here. No, we never did. We never did, and so it's frustrating. This is it's immensely frustrating. What do you do in that kind of situation? You're dealing with people who, like I say, who are unreasonable, who don't take this stuff seriously. It's been made political. That's right. The pandemic has been made political in some ways, which is bad. I mean, so the only thing you can do, only thing you have left in that situation is to scream at people. I'm sorry. I don't blame him. I don't blame Tom Cruise for what he did ever at all. I do not blame you, Mr. Cruise. You got people in this country right now who just don't believe in science. You've always had that. You've always had the hyper masculinity. You've always had the taking precautions as women. That's why they say that women live longer than men. That's how I always looked at that. Jump in head first without looking. That's always been the manhood thing, and that taking precautions, things like that, are somehow feminine. They're weak. Look, I just, like I said, I understand what he's talking about. I understand his frustration. Obviously, his case, he's got a lot of things on his shoulder, and he's got to be frustrated to where he's like, look, man, you're either gonna follow these rules You know, what is SRT? Hit the road of the highway. You know, hit the road of the highway, bro. I'm not gonna play with you. And like I said, I think sometimes with the left is like, why couldn't he just have talked to him? Why couldn't he? And it's just like, that's a problem because there are certain people in this world who are not listening, who are going to do as little as possible, and you know they're not going to make smart decisions, and you got to be aware of that. There are some people you can't be nice to. There are some people you can't work with. I'm sorry. You know, I don't think that's smart. I don't think that's wise. The left has a lot to offer. Look, the left has a lot to offer. We got to be strong. We have to set boundaries. And in Tom Cruise's case, I lay down the law. We are going to follow science and empirical evidence. And we're going to work towards a world that's more secure and a world that makes sense. Thank you for listening.